In the darkness of the theater, we watch her run. We hear his breath, we feel her panic, her shallow breath, her desperate scramble for a hiding place that won't be good enough. We see him stalking his prey through the bush and silently wait for the right moment to strike. She is the final girl. She is the one that we're supposed to root for. She's the one that we're supposed to be, right? And he's the killer, the one of our nightmares. And he's the one that we're supposed to fear, right? But if she is us, then what is he? What if the masked killer stalking her isn't just an external monster? What if he is a projection, a dark mirror reflecting everything she has repressed, denied, or been forced to abandon? Hi, welcome baby bats and scaredy cats to another episode of Cinemancy. I'm your host, Isabella von Ghoul. Today we'll be talking about the relationship between the final girl and the killer. Maybe you have been stuck in one of those annoying, endlessly boring conversations about how Batman is nothing without the Joker, or Lex Luthor and Superman are nothing without each other. Well, we've all been there, but have you ever thought about the relationship between the final girl and the killer? Why these two figures are locked in like an endless battle with each other throughout time? I want to explore the relationship between those two figures. What does the final girl represent, and what does the killer represent in our media, but then also in our psyche as well? So join me as we talk about this, the relationship of the final girl and her killer. What does it mean in our minds, in our media, and also in our nightmares? In 1992, scholar Carol J. Clover published a book that would forever change how we watch and talk about horror movies. It was called Men, Women, and Chainsaws: Gender in the Modern Horror Film. In it, she dissected the slasher genre with surgical precision, giving a name to the trope of the final girl and analyzing her function in the genre. But Clover's analysis went deeper than just plot summaries. She identified a fluidity of identity in the theater, a phenomenon she called audience cross-gender identification. She argued that the adolescent male audience identifies not with the male killer, but with the frightened feminine final girl during the chase, and then with the phallic empowered final girl when she turns the tables and grabs the weapon. Today we're going to take Clover's framework and push it into the realm of psychology, specifically the Jungian concept of the shadow self. The theory of this: the final girl and the killer are not opposite, separate selves. They are two halves of the same self. Okay, go with me. The killer represents everything the final girl has repressed in order to survive in a patriarchal world. And the evolution of their relationship from Halloween to Barbarian tells the story of a psyche tearing itself apart and sometimes putting itself back together. To understand this relationship, we need a quick lesson in Jungian psychology. You know I love Carl Jung. Carl Jung proposed that the human psyche is made up of several parts. There's the persona, the mask we wear for society, the polite, acceptable version of ourselves. There's the ego, our conscious mind, the I that we recognize, and then lurking in the unconscious, there is the shadow self. The shadow contains everything we repress: our primal instincts, our rage, our envy, our forbidden desires. It's not inherently evil. It's just the stuff that society tells us to kind of keep inside. Carol J. Clover, writing before she would really have used Jungian terms, essentially described the slasher genre as a battle between a socially conditioned self and a monstrous id self. The id is the instinctual impulse, need, and desire that all beings, particularly related to sex and aggression, have. In Halloween, there's a stark contrast between Laurie Strode and her friends, Annie and Linda. Annie and Linda are sexually active. They are rebellious. They smoke pot. They're, like, in the language at the time, unruly teens, right? Those two have given in to the id, and they're punished for it. Clover writes extensively about the abominable attribution of the killer's vision. The camera often adopts the killer's point of view, voyeuristically watching the girls. This POV, Clover argues, is coded as male, even when the killer is biologically female, as in Friday the 13th. But what happens when we stop seeing the POV as male and start seeing the POV as the shadow? Laurie Strode is the perfect persona. She is the good girl. She is chaste, responsible, and babysits instead of partying. But to maintain that persona, she has to repress everything her friends express. She has to bury her own sexuality, her own rebellion, her own unruliness. And what is Michael Myers? He is the living embodiment of pure, motiveless id. Dr. Loomis calls him pure evil, but he is also pure desire. He desires nothing but to consume. He doesn't have to follow the rules. He doesn't have to be polite. He represses no urge, no desire. When Laurie picks up the knife, Clover describes this moment as the phallicization of the final girl. She assumes the power of the male aggressor to survive. But in Jungian terms, she is integrating her shadow self. She is accessing the rage and violence she has repressed her entire life. For one brief moment, Laurie and Michael are the same. She is the mirror image of the things she fears. She is the aggressor. The problem? As soon as the threat is gone, she represses it again. She goes catatonic. The shadow is still out there, lurking, because she refused to fully acknowledge it within herself. And he will return. Probably in more movies than he really should have, but that's a conversation for another day. It took nearly 2 decades for the shadow to learn how to speak. For decades, we had the silent, stalking killer. And it did so through the medium of metafiction in Wes Craven's Scream. Sidney Prescott, like Laurie, is a good girl. She's traumatized by her mother's murder, and she carries that weight like a shield. But the killers in Scream, Billy and Stu, are different from Michael Myers. They are not mute voids. They talk, they taunt, they explain. Billy is Sidney's boyfriend. He's the person she trusts. In Jungian terms, he is the perfect vessel for her shadow, because he's already inside her intimate circle. Everything Sidney represses, her anger at her mother, her own sexual desires, her violent impulses, Billy acts out. Clover noted that the slasher film often involves a terrible place, a house or location where a horrible event occurred in the past. For Sidney, that place is her own home, and the past event is her mother's murder. The repressed family secret returns to destroy the present. When Sidney finally turns the tables, she does something Laurie never could. She takes control of the narrative. She doesn't just stab the killer, she outsmarts him. She plays his game better than he does. This is a more advanced form of shadow integration. Sidney acknowledges that she lives in a world with rules, and she uses those rules to her advantage.
I like that ending.
But the film's ending is telling. Billy is dead, the shadow is vanquished, but the trauma remains. The final shot of the trilogy, the original, often leaves Sidney isolated, a survivor in a world that can't understand her. The integration is again temporary. The 2010s brought a paradigm shift. What if the shadow wasn't the enemy? What if the persona, the mask we wear, was the real prison? Clover's work focused heavily on the reaction of the audience. We root for the final girl because she suffers. But in films like The Witch and Midsommar, they complicate that suffering. In Robert Eggers' The Witch, Thomasin is trapped in a 17th century Puritan society. The persona that she's forced to wear is one of piety, obedience, and silence. Her shadow contains everything a Puritan woman can't be: sexual, independent, powerful. The witch in the woods is not just a monster. She is an external manifestation of Thomason's repressed desires. The witch dances in the woods. The witch is free. The witch has power. When Thomason finally signs the Devil's Book and joins the coven, she isn't being defeated. She's liberated. She stops running from her shadow and embraces it fully. She becomes the witch. The perspective of the killer and the final girl merge completely. Ari Aster's Midsommar offers an even more complex version of this. Dani is a woman drowning in grief. Her boyfriend, Christian, is emotionally unavailable and distant to her. He represents the cold, detached persona she's asked to maintain in order to keep their relationship together. The Harga cult, for all of its horrors and atrocities, is the first community that sees her pain and recognizes it. They validate her shadow. In the final image of the film, Dani smiles through tears as her boyfriend burns alive inside of a bear carcass. It's the ultimate integration. She has sacrificed her attachment to the persona that suffered in silence. She has allowed her shadow, her rage, her grief, her desire for destruction to take the lead. She is the final girl, but she has also become the architect of the horror. She is both the victim and the victor, merging the two poles that Jung identified. Which brings us to Ty West's work, the dual portrait of Maxine and Pearl. If Jung and Clover had some sort of grotesque cinematic baby, it would probably be. So let's start with X. Maxine Minx is a porn actress in the 1970s. She is sexually liberated, ambitious, and driven. On the surface, she seems to have no repressed shadow. She's living it. But Pearl is her shadow. Pearl is what happens when society denies a woman her desires. In Pearl, we see the origin story. Pearl is a young woman trapped on a farm in 1918. She has the same ambitions as Maxine, to be a star, to be loved, to be free. But the world tells her no. She must be a good farm wife. She must take care of her sick father. She must repress everything. And once again, we come to the terrible place as a location. But in Pearl, the terrible place is her. The repression builds and builds and builds until it explodes into violence. Pearl becomes the monster because she was never allowed to be the star. The frozen smile is the persona cracking. It's the mask that can no longer contain the shadow. Now back to X. When Maxine faces Pearl, she's facing her own potential future. She's facing the ghost of what happens to a woman whose ambition is denied. Maxine survives not because she is good, but because her will to live, her ambition, is stronger than Pearl's rage.
I'm a fucking star! The whole world is gonna know my name!
Say it now.
I will not accept a life I do not
I
deserve!
do not deserve.
In that moment, Maxine is asserting her existence over the repressed shadow self. She is saying, I will not become you. But the film leaves a chilling question. Will she? Finally, we come to the most psychologically complex iteration of this dynamic. Jordan Peele's Us. In Us, writer-director Jordan Peele builds a labyrinth both physically and psychologically. Adelaide, played by Lupita Nyong'o, is our initial final girl. She's a loving wife, a dutiful mother. She is kind and by all appearances seems to be a perfectly normal woman. The horror that she falls into is systemic horror. It's not just a monster, it's a legacy. It's her legacy. Adelaide meets Red, also played by Lupita Nyong'o, her tether, a copy of her who lives underground who wishes to be untethered from their above-ground doppelgangers. Red has brought along her whole family, a twisted replica of Adelaide's family. Literal shadow versions of this perfectly normal middle-class American family. Here, Clover's thesis reaches its most tragic conclusion. The victim and the villain are the same person. We find this isn't the first time that Red and Adelaide have met. Years earlier, at the Santa Monica Pier, the two exchanged positions and lives. Red is stuck underground while Adelaide lives her life in comfort and privilege. The question becomes, then, who is whom's shadow? Red is doing what any mother would do for her children. She wants a better life for them, and she will fight for an opportunity for them to live in a healthy environment where they can thrive, a place she vaguely remembers from childhood. From a certain perspective, she is the hero of this story. The climax of the movie is between Red and Adelaide. As the two of them fight, Red holding onto her persona self as a ballerina, and Adelaide as the shadow, growling and grasping at her wildly. In the final scene between them, Adelaide kills Red, snapping her neck with handcuffs while making the guttural, feral, animalistic sounds of someone who has completely forsaken their persona self. The mask is off. Adelaide is pure instinct and id now. She is aggression and rage. She kills the part of herself that was born human and embraces her true identity as a person, literally born in the shadows. In the last scene, Jason looks to his mother and sees something different, something in her face he doesn't recognize. What we do not know, but when he sees it, he puts on his mask and continues to ride in the car in silence. Carol J. Clover gave us the language to talk about the final girl. She showed us the horror is a space where gender is fluid, where audiences can cross-identify, where the lines between victim and victor are sometimes blurred. Carl Jung gives us the reasons why this resonates so deeply. The final girl is our ego trying to navigate a terrifying world. The killer is our shadow, the repressed rage and desire we deny. The slasher film is the story of the psyche battling itself. The evolution of the final girl is the evolution of her own self-awareness. In the 70s and 80s, we feared the shadow, we tried to keep it locked away, but like Michael Myers and his institutions, it always escaped. In the 90s, we tried to outsmart it, to understand and subvert its rules. In the 2010s, we realized the shadow might be more authentic than the mask that we wear, and we started to listen to it. And now, in the 2020s, we are forced to confront the terrifying truth. There is no pure victim, and there is no pure monster. We are all capable of becoming the thing that we fear, especially if the world pushes us enough. The final girl looks into the mirror, and staring back at her is the face of the killer. The question the best modern horror asks is not will she survive, but who will she be when the screaming stops? Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and this deep dive into the psychology of horror. I hope that you like this one. Remember to share, like, and subscribe this video. I really hope if you like it. It does me a world of good if you share this. It actually helps to send it to more people and let the algorithm know that people are actually interested in this. So please do it if you liked it. And even if you didn't like it, send it to an enemy, send it to a foe. I'm sure they'll love it. But thanks so much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. In the meantime, take care of yourself, be kind to other people, look out for each other, because the monsters are always closer than you think. All right, bye. See you later. Bye.